morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and we'll begin our business here shortly. But we have two bills we want to talk about today, have hearings on, and I think we can manage those, get all the information we need. So we will begin with Senate Bill 345, and we'll ask the reviser to start off and explain that. Thank you, Tamara.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. Senate Bill 345 addresses civil penalties for unlawful transportation of animals into the state. Currently, KSA 47607C states that any person who violates the importation of livestock laws shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine between $100 and $1,000 or imprisonment between 30 days and 1 year. As the bill is currently written, it would change the penalty for that violation to a Class A misdemeanor, which is up to 1 year in jail and a $2,500 fine. Additionally, the bill would allow a civil penalty between $100 and $1,000 for each violation. And in the case of a continuing violation, every day could be deemed a separate violation. Any penalty imposed would be upon written order of the Animal Health Commissioner, and that penalty may be appealed within 20 days. And any money collected from any of these civil penalties would be deposited in the state general fund. The bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Questions for the reviser? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I apologize to the chair for being late. I didn't realize session started at 8. I missed session 2, but in any event...
He did announce it yesterday.
My question for the reviser, since I'm running late and a little bit confused, is this the Ag Committee or is this the Education Committee?
Ag, did you get the wrong memo?
Well, we're on Senate Bill 345.
Correct.
Senate Committee on Education. I'm just messing with our reviser. But if you look at it, it does say on mine, Senate Committee on...
I've had a long week, sir.
Only you would get that memo. Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and no apologies needed, Senator Peck, because the Senate general orders that were sent out said Thursday, February 11th, not Friday, February 11th, so not your fault.
Now, any questions for Tamara? Thank you very much, Tamara. Appreciate it. Our first conferee is Dr. Andy Hawkins, Assistant Animal Health Commissioner, Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome to the committee, Andy.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Kirchen, members of the committee. My name is Andy Hawkins, and I currently serve as the Assistant Animal Health Commissioner at the Kansas Department of Ag. And I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 345, which addresses laws pertaining to the movement of livestock into the state of Kansas. As it currently stands, KSA 47607 makes it unlawful to import livestock into the state of Kansas without a CVI, or a certificate of veterinary inspection, which is also basically like a health certificate. A penalty, if you're caught bringing cattle in or livestock in without a CVI, you'd be found guilty or potentially found guilty of an unclassified misdemeanor, and enforcement would be at the local jurisdiction or at the county level, the way it currently stands. So what is a CVI? So a CVI is a health certificate. It basically is issued by a Category 2 licensed and accredited veterinarian. And in this case, it would be in the origination state. And that veterinarian signs off on the CVI and attests to the fact that livestock on that shipment are free of contagious and communicable disease. And it also provides valuable information in the event that there's a disease situation or a disease incident associated with that shipment, that we can actually do trace back to find out where that shipment originated from and maybe who also was in contact. The other thing that a CVI does is it also provides an opportunity for the veterinarian and the producer to have a conversation to make sure that the destination state import requirements are being met. Every state in the United States has the ability to set their own import requirements, and for the most part, those are universal, but they can change, and they can change based on current events or maybe a disease outbreak or those types of things, and so something to be aware of. So when we receive indication that an import violation has occurred, as you guys can probably imagine, it requires an inordinate amount of time on our part and our staff. There's a lot of people that support us and help us in our division to go out and try to find out about the movement that occurred in violation. A lot of times we have very limited access to records, trying to figure out if we can verify the disease status of the movement and those types of things. And then the way things are today, livestock move very fast. So a lot of times, by the time we're on scene or able to follow up on a situation like this after we've been notified, the cattle or the livestock in this case have went to already destination number 2, so they've already been dispersed. And that makes it very impractical for us to go and put a quarantine on because the livestock are gone. So, so just kind of setting the ground there. Some examples. In the probably just in the past year, we've seen some shipments of bulls come in from a neighboring state. The producer was told by the veterinarian in that state that he had to have a CVI and that the trick requirements had to be met for those bulls coming into the state of Kansas. And trick is a disease that can cause infertility in a cow herd. We have a very low incidence or prevalence in the state, and we plan to keep it that way. So the individual went ahead and moved. So we have no CVI, no disease verification status that those animals are free from trick. Another classic example that we see is horses or equine moving into the state with no certificate of veterinary inspection. On the horse side of things, to enter the state of Kansas, you have to have a negative Hawkins, which is a test for equine infectious anemia. So not only no CVI, but also no guarantee that those animals are free from EIA or equine infectious anemia. So incidents like these obviously put our livestock population at risk, and also opens up the doors that we could actually be, in trouble or pose a risk as far as introducing a foreign animal disease as well. So in order to have adequate and timely oversight, the Animal Health Commissioner is requesting that authority to issue civil penalties be added to the import law at KSA 47607. And then, since this bill was originally brought to your attention, we've had further conversation with stakeholders and would like to also provide for consideration the following amendments. And those should be reflected in my testimony, but I'll hit kind of the high points. Under A, we would include intentionally or knowingly violates or intentionally or knowingly fails to comply. And the idea behind that is we're going after the bad actors, if you will, the ones that are continually doing this and knowingly violating. Also, we would change it from a Class A misdemeanor to a Class C misdemeanor. Under B, it currently says it may incur a civil penalty not less than $100, but not more than $1,000 for each violation. And we would propose changing that to each shipment. And that's just a fact of the matter of being practical, because if you have a semi-load of cattle, there's 40 head on that load. The way that currently reads, that would be a $4,000 to a $40,000 civil penalty, and that's just not being practical. And then finally, on E, we would also like to include language that when a movement violation is identified, that we would have the ability to request the records to try to make sure that we can verify the disease status of those animals that made up that shipment. So KDA believes this bill will help the Animal Health Commissioner be able to fulfill his duties to protect the livestock here in the state of Kansas, mitigate against the risk of contagious and communicable disease, and do everything we can to keep foreign animal diseases out of our state. So with that, I'd stand for questions. I thank everybody for their time.
Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate that information. I'll start with a question. You're just talking about when it says transporting animals into the state, just talking about cattle and horses?
That's correct. So this would be livestock, so, which under the definition of livestock, that would also include sheep, pigs, but not small animals.
The definition of animal, I guess, is what I was concerned about, so.
Yep.
And then the other question I have, you mentioned that, is that the nickname for the name trichomoniasis? Is that what trick is? Okay.
Yes, yep, trichomoniasis.
Okay, any questions? Senator Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't apply any to intrastate, does it? Is this all interstate?
That's correct. This is interstate movement, so somebody from outside of Kansas bringing livestock into the state. For the most part, intrastate movement CVIs are not required. There are occasions whenever they may be implemented for like a livestock show or those types of things, but for the most part, we're focused on interstate, somebody coming into the state of Kansas.
Reichman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For some reason, I didn't get a packet for 345. If I did, I lost it, and I would sure appreciate it if I could follow along on the bills. Thank you. Thank you. You don't want to look at yours is all dirty.
Reichman, do you have a question too, or just a?
Oh, no, thank you. I just needed help.
Thank you. Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation on this, and I think any of us involved in agriculture can appreciate trying to protect our livestock. My concern is, and I would support this, but I don't know that this is the real threat. I'm less afraid of lions and tigers and bears and more fearful of a zoonotic disease escaping from the NBAF facility in the future. How do you think that this bill could be improved by providing us some more security from any kind of virus escaping from that facility?
This bill is strictly to deal with interstate movement, so I don't know that it would be, there's nothing really here that would be in relation to NBAF that I can think of.
So I'm assuming that these dangerous diseases, bacteria, will be studied at NBAF, and they will be transported into and out of the state for research. What are the security measures being taken to make sure that a truck doesn't have an accident or a plane doesn't crash and it decimate our entire livestock population?
So again, this bill would specifically deal with certificates of veterinary inspection and live animal movement.
So this does nothing to protect us from any kind of disease being transported in a vial?
No, ma'am. This would be livestock.
Right.
Livestock, so
Yeah.
correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in looking at the proposed amendments, when you described what I see as E, require any records, you were hoping that we would have records about the animals themselves and their vaccination records. So I might ask you or the department to work with the reviser to make sure that that any records related to the animals as well as the suspected transportation, because this could just be when did the truck cross the state line, and just assure ourselves that that wording would get us the veterinary records of the animals themselves.
Any other questions for Tompkins? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Donnelly from Kansas Farm Bureau. Welcome to the committee, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am John Donnelly. I'm here today testifying on behalf of the Kansas Farm Bureau. I I don't have a lot to repeat that Dr. Hawkins has not already described as to what the bill is intending to do. I will say the bill as drafted, I probably wouldn't be here as a proponent, but due to the good work of other stakeholders and the department, we are here as proponents with the proposed amendment included. And I want to, again, I'm trying not to make a habit of this in front of this committee, but I want to extend our thanks to the department of working with us as we saw some concerns with the original language, and I think Dr. Hawkins definitely addressed them. One of the main concerns was, the shipment issue and putting the wording as shipment versus however it is in the bill originally, but potentially could be a load of, 100, 400-pound calves that could be a really significant penalty for the fact that the seller in Montana forgot to put a sheet of paper in a semi. So that was the reasoning behind that, and not that that is the intent of what they're going after. We also fully support the monitoring and the work that they do to protect the state and quite frankly across the nation, many states doing this, and at the federal level, the animal health concerns and working with other states and the federal government to ensure that we can control these diseases as we move forward, and the efforts from the Kansas Department of Agriculture, the Division of Animal Health, they are leaders on that front. So that's my testimony. We support the bill with the amendment. So I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Donnelly? Committee? I have one, I guess. You talked about somebody didn't get his notes in the shipment. Shows up and they're checking him out. And get a phone? Can a phone call verify that for you for the?
I would say in practice, it probably never even is noticed. I would assert that likely the department would work with the producer to make sure that, I don't think they're going after those situations. I just have this natural distrust occasionally that perks its ugly head in my mind, and it makes me worry when words are on paper that would allow that. Even though it may not happen, we don't want to give them the ability to let that happen.
Any other questions? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John. I know you have cattle, and could you share on a level, in comparing the two, which would you be more fearful of? A truckload of cattle coming into the state, or a vial of hoof and mouth disease?
I think the implication, or the implication to the industry with the hoof and mouth disease becoming prevalent in the United States is definitely something that I worry about, probably more, and I would assert that so does the Department of Agriculture and so do the appropriate agencies at the federal level. We have run tests for foot and mouth disease, and I don't want to speak out of turn. Dr. Hawkins will correct me if I'm wrong, but since I've been involved in this industry in this capacity or previous capacities in my adult life, I have been involved in many scenarios where we do simulated foot and mouth disease practices through the Kansas Emergency Management Group, and the Animal Health Department's been very involved in that over the years. I have, I once again, when I say that the Kansas Department of Agriculture and the Division of Animal Health are leaders in many of these industries, I think that is precisely one of the issues that we are leaders in and have been leaders in, and I have confidence in their abilities and the preparedness that they have on those issues and other issues. I've lived through the BSE case in 2003. In fact, I can go into stories of having to leave a marriage prep class to go deal with the cow that stole Christmas. So, and at that time, we dealt with those issues as they come forward, and I do have confidence that they are prepared. We encourage them to continually to be prepared. So while I would, to answer your question, I worry about that more, but so do a lot of other people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just really mainly for the public's benefit that in BAF, it was a level 4 lab, just like the Wuhan lab. And in fact, in February of 2020, I think I was on the House Ag Budget or Ag Committee and had asked how prepared are we for something like the swine flu? Because I think in China at the time, the swine flu had decimated probably 90% of their swine population. And I was told, oh, we're very prepared. We've got the Department of Agriculture working with ks.gov. And I think we've all quickly realized how ill-prepared we are dealing with coronavirus in humans. So I still am not, even bills like this do not ease my concern that we are prepared to handle something like the swine flu that happened in China. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would say that sometimes answers to difficult questions in legislative committees that are open to the public, occasionally you might not get the answers you want because they cannot provide the answers you want because of security issues, which I know you care about national security issues, and so do they.
Questions, committee? I would ask one, I'd ask more for the department. Don't they do drills? We do a drill every year with the Department of Agriculture on a case for several days scenario on what, in the event there's an outbreak, what, how the response would be. And I think that's ongoing, isn't it? That might be your question.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you want to talk about that a little bit, how that works for the committee?
Andy Hawkins. So yes, every year we do stand up our incident management team and go through a foreign animal disease exercise, and usually it's a foot and mouth incident. Foot and mouth obviously is highly contagious. Any cloven-hooved animals or who can get it. So yes, we do. We have an incident management team of probably over 100 people that participate. And we also engage industry partners, the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, and other state agencies as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I kind of got ahead of John there. So does anybody have any questions for Mr. Donnelly? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more a comment. Just to say that there are probably appropriate places in our statute to deal with other threats, but at this time, we're really looking at, KSA 47-607, and so I think it'd be most helpful to concentrate on making sure we get this part of our protection right.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Donnelly? Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Always welcome here. So, committee, we don't have any more proponents to testify. We have one neutral, and Dean Clark, Director of Stockholders, Kansas Livestock Association. Welcome to the committee, Dean. As neutral, testify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As he said, my name is Dean Clare. I serve as the Director of Stockholders Division for the Kansas Livestock Association. Thank you for allowing us to express our views today. And we're here as neutral, but I want to be clear that we support the Department of Agriculture's Division of Animal Health and their effort to safeguard our domestic livestock herds from foreign animal disease outbreak. I'm not going to reiterate what Dr. Hawkins already said. I think he did a great job of explaining how CVIs are used, and specifically to the cattle industry. When we talk about trick, brucellosis, bovine tuberculosis, these documents are essential in ensuring that those disease outbreaks don't occur here in Kansas. With that said, you're probably wondering why we are not a proponent, and that is simply just part of our policy process. We're supportive of the department, but don't have specific policy on penalty levels. We worked with the department alongside other stakeholders with those amendments, and we'll present those at our legislative meeting to be voted on by membership and our board of directors next week, but don't want that to slow down this process, and I'm sure we will have a more permanent view as this goes forward, but appreciate the department and their ability to work with those amendments and the concerns that were brought forward as we discuss this bill with our volunteer leaders.
Senator Reichman.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the packet like I got here. Appreciate your testimony. I'm always interested when someone comes neutral, and you gave your reason. I understand that. And then, of course, with amendments, you're waiting, my understanding that you're waiting till you have your meeting and so on. Would I be out of line to ask you if you see any concerns with these amendments yourself, your personal opinion on it? I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
So when the department discussed working with stakeholders, we were part of those stakeholders that worked with them. In this position where we don't have direct policy, we go to our volunteer leaders who we have executive members in the stock growers and feedlot industries that we go to. And a lot of those concerns were addressed and fixed in those amendments that were brought forward. And I'm confident following our meeting that those amendments will be much appreciated by our membership.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Dean? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dean, for being here today. Does the Kansas Livestock Association share an office with the Kansas Beef Council?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I don't know if you can answer this question or if we have someone here from the Beef Council, but it's my understanding that beef checkoff dollars go for research also. Is there someone that can tell me what portion of the Kansas checkoff dollars have gone towards research?
There is no one here with the Beef Council today, but I'm sure that that's information that we can get to you. As you know, the Beef Council takes checkoff dollars to use for research, education, and promotion. But as far as how that's divided out into each category, those numbers I don't have in front of me.
Any other questions for?
Thank you.
You got another one? Any other questions for Dean? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next committee, we go to the opponents. There are no opponents on this bill today, unless we'll ask for some. There's someone in the committee room today that would want to testify as an opponent to this bill. Is there anyone in the room that still might want to test neutral? Is there any other one who wants to maybe do another proponent? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 345 and open up the hearing on Senate Bill 417. We'll start off with Tamara and the reviser. Welcome to the committee, Tamara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to get ahead of it, this bill memo is also for the Committee on Ag, not the Committee on Education, despite what it says in your packet. Senate Bill 417 would establish new permit renewal fee limitations for solid waste disposal areas and processing facilities that are regulated by the federal government regarding the disposal of coal combustion residuals and landfills and surface impoundments. Currently, those solid waste disposal areas and processing facilities have an annual permit renewal fee of at least $1,000, but not more than $4,000. And as it is currently written, Senate Bill 417 would amend the annual permit renewal fees for those facilities and areas to a minimum of $12,000 and a maximum of $16,000. The $12,000 minimum fee would apply until a new fee schedule could be adopted by the Secretary. The first fees would be due by September 1st, 2022, and the bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Any questions for the reviser? Not seeing any, thank you. Senator Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your information, it says that a solid waste disposal area and processing facilities annual permit fee, would that still be at the $1,000 to $4,000? And then I looked at the bill and it still has the language. It says except as provided in paragraph 3, and then it's still got the $1,000, $4,000. So would that still be available, or is it going to be moving to the 12 and 16?
So these new fees are for these particular facilities and areas that deal with the coal combustion residuals. The fees, the $1,000 and $4,000 would exist for other types of facilities and areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that clarification. Our first proponent is Geoff Green from the Director of Environment Compliance, Evergy. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jeff Green. I'm the Senior Director of Environmental Compliance with Evergy. I'm here to represent not only Evergy, but Kansas City Board of Public Utilities and Sunflower Electric Power Corporation, because all three of those utilities are the ones that have the coal-fired power plants in the state. And the coal-fired process creates ash, as you know, and that ash you'll hear me refer to as CCR, or coal combustion residuals. So we're subject to environmental requirements at the federal level that just became finalized in 2015. That was the first federal regulation for coal combustion residuals. Prior to that, and currently, we are subject to Kansas regulations as well with Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and those have been in place for many years. They're very familiar with our facilities. So what Senate Bill 417 does, it enables KDHE to basically have the funding to apply for a state-managed CCR permitting program, as opposed to allowing the federal government to assume that role. So with coal combustion residuals, the current federal rule, it is self-implementing. So what that means is we rely on our qualified professional engineers to make determinations as to whether or not we are in compliance with the regulation. That started in 2015. In 2016, the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act, or WIN Act, did a couple of things related to CCR. First off, it gave EPA the authority to enforce under their federal regulation, and it also gave states the ability to apply for the state-run CCR permitting program option. So back in 2017 and 18, we all three utilities spent significant time working with KDHE to develop a proposed state plan. We put that on hold because there was a few states going through the process at the time, and they were facing some legal challenges. Actually, EPA was facing legal challenges as far as the public participation process, the approval process. Those have been resolved, and so we restarted discussions here about the past year or so with KDHE to get back on track for that. And basically during that process recently, KDHE brought it to our attention that to effectively manage a new permitting program, they'd like to have 1.5 full-time employees, full-time equivalent employees, and they don't have the funding based on the current statute limit of $4,000 per permit fee renewal to be able to fund that ask. And so the utilities here are in support of those higher fees under Senate Bill 417, which would be assessed upon us. The CCR rule itself is technical by nature. It requires us to monitor various things in groundwater, along with other requirements that we have to post publicly. All three of us have public websites where we upload all of this information. And some of these requirements exist, could be as short as years after a unit closes or decades after a unit closes, just based on how we close that unit. And we're just now starting to see EPA take some action, actually just this past month, regarding determinations and interpretations of their rule. And this is the first time they've done that since the rule was finalized almost 7 years ago. So a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, in our opinion, on some of these items are starting to come out. So as far as KDHE, like I mentioned, they're very familiar with our sites. With the existing regulations, we already have to gain approval from KDHE regarding construction of new units or expanding units, the method of closure for units. We submit our groundwater results. They have to approve a sampling and analysis plan for each of these units, an operating plan for these units. So long story short, they're very familiar with our specific units, along with the physical makeup of where our units are located. And so we feel that KDHE is best suited to manage that state CCR permitting program. Now, if the committee does decide to work this bill, there are two amendments that we're proposing that we just brought up this past week related to the fee structure. One of them would revert the fees back to the original, the lower level, in the event that Kansas is unsuccessful in getting a state permitting program approved. And then the other one basically sunsets all of the permitting fees with our CCR units once we complete all regulatory required actions in post-closure care. And like I said before, it depends on how we close the unit. It could be months or it could be decades as far as how long those requirements go on for. So in summary, Evergy, Kansas City Board of Public Utilities, and Sunflower Electric Power Corporation are all in support of Senate Bill 417 and the associated funding that we would absorb to allow KDHE to manage this state-managed CCR permitting program in lieu of having federal regulators come in and assume that role for them. Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and appreciate your consideration of Senate Bill 417, and I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Jeff, very much. Any questions? Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I want to make sure I understand it. Whenever I hear the EPA and going to come and help you, I'm a little concerned. And so if we're going to have the state do it, KDHE, I'll be in favor of that. And then it said to do that, they're going to have to need 1.5 more full-time employees. This is fee. The money's going to come from the people that you're getting it from, and they said they're okay with it. And then when your amendments, once it gets taken care of, or if it does taken care of, it's going to be go away back to the original. Is that in a nutshell what you were saying?
Yes, sir. We're only proposing the higher fees if a state-approved program is in place. If we become subject to a federal permit program, and by the way, EPA, they haven't finalized that rule. It's currently proposed, but we expect it to be finalized soon, and then we'll potentially be subject to a federal permit. So the amendment says if we become subject to a federal permit, the fees revert back, because in essence, then there is no state permitting program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want clarification.
That's good to know that. Any other questions for Jeff? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If 12,000 and 16,000 are good, wouldn't 24,000 and 32,000 be better?
The amount was determined based on the 1.5 full-time equivalent employees that KDHE has said that they need to manage the program, and that's based on the number of CCR units that are in the state, which is around 16 of them today. So I'm sure KDHE would like additional funding, but we feel that's the appropriate amount.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if the fee is approved, if this legislation goes through, it's going to cost the utilities additional funds. Where do you get your money from?
As a regulated utility, that's set through rate-making process.
Is through ratepayers?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the explanation. So I'm assuming you will provide the committee those proposed amendments in writing?
Yes, we could do that.
And then the only other question I would have, because these fees are in some ways directly related to salaries, what would happen over time, 10 years from now, if salaries have increased?
That's a good question. So that's why we set a range, and maybe the range is too small, but the intent and the way it's written is that it would start at the minimum, at least for an amount of time until the Secretary establishes a new regulation. But yes, that's a potential over time that they could bump up against that if they increase salaries.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think just because we were thinking of the 1 and 4, there would be one fee probably for all the facilities and set approximately $12,000 at the beginning.
That's right, for the
Thank you.
CCR facilities.
Okay. Any other questions for Jeff? Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand why this is referred to ag because of the KDHE involvement. But I also would appreciate some input from the Utilities Committee because this affects the energy companies. So, thank you.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, we have no other proponents on the schedule. Our next testimony will be neutral, and it would be Julie Coleman, Bureau of Waste Management, KDHE. Welcome to the committee. Thank you. Julie.
Good morning, Chairman Kirshen and members of the committee. My name is Julie Coleman. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Waste Management for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Maybe I should take that off. Is that better? Okay. I'm so used to it, I forget I have it on sometimes. So I'm here today to present this neutral testimony on behalf of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And as Jeff mentioned, Senate Bill 417 would revise our statute, 653407, to increase the allowable annual permit renewal fee only for these coal combustion residual disposal units that are in place at our electric power plants. As Jeff mentioned, these facilities have become subject to new federal rules with additional federal rulemaking in process. So there are future rulemaking activities that we're going to have to engage in if we continue pursuit of authorization of the program. And we want to be sure that we have adequate funding in place so that we can support this program and demonstrate to the EPA that we do have the resources needed to assume state program approval. And I want to make it clear, I think it's been made clear that there are no other solid waste facilities in the state that would be subject to this increase in the permit renewal fee. It would be exclusively applied to the CCR units at these electric power plants. The electric power industry did come to KDHE. They have repeatedly requested that we pursue program approval. We have been working on that process with EPA for some time, but in order to move forward, assume the program, issue the permits, administer all of the federal requirements, we do need to fill this full-time engineering position and a half-time environmental specialist. This funding allows us to do that without moving funding away from all of our other state solid waste program activities. So it's kind of the industry is providing the fee for us to administer this particular program. I don't have any other comments at this time, but I'm happy to stand for your questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Julie? Seeing none, thank you very much. Oh, Senator Peck, sorry about that.
I'm sorry, you look this way first and look the other way, and by the time, so I apologize to the chair.
I missed it.
Many agencies have vacant positions. So if this legislation passes and you have the funding, are you going to be asking for additional positions, or would you move a vacant position into this position?
That latter scenario is what we will do. We have two part-time positions that have been in our budget that we have left vacant for shrinkage purposes, just to be able to manage our expenditures and our revenues. So if this is passed, then we'll fill those two existing positions, and they would be dedicated to the CCR program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Julie? Seeing none, we'll move on. I will ask, there are no opponents for this bill. I will ask, are there anybody here who would like to testify as an opponent? Anyone would consider testifying neutral other than what we already have? Is there any other proponents? I want to make sure we didn't miss anybody. See, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciated the question about whether utilities should weigh in on this, and I would be happy to ask CURB, which is the Citizens Utility Rate-Making Board, if they have any comments for the committee about this. They're the group that oversees, what the effects are of, and enter into rate cases. I'm thinking that the amount of money that we're talking about would make no difference in rates, but we could have that confirmed by that review.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, committee? Seeing none, the hearing is adjourned.